4 edit confessions of anger and regret. The last one will leave you questioning the justice system. I hate my brother. I really hate my brother. My parents were fairly strict with me and my older brother, but never with my younger brother, the one I can't stand. As a child it was really annoying to see him get special treatment, because, apparently, that's just the way he is. He almost died in my mother's womb, so I think they were always just thankful he survived. That's not really why I hate him, because, as I said, it was just annoying and didn't help much in terms of us becoming friends, but it is not his fault. The thing is, the fact that he never faced real consequences for anything has made him such an insufferable dick now that we are kind of grown up. I do not want to go as far as to say we are adults, since we are in our early 20s. We both still live at home and neither of us can afford to move out. He constantly invades the privacy of others by not only stealing their stuff, but demanding physical affection, even when the other person is not willing to give it. He constantly oversteps boundaries with his behavior and never for a second thinks about how others feel when he says or does anything. Everything bad that is happening is other people's faults. He constantly trash talks his boss, who had the audacity to tell him that coming late to work almost every day will get him fired one day. He is always late. If you don't alter your schedule for his lateness, then you're the bad one. He also never pays back the money he owes you. It took him 2 months to give me the 50 euros he owed me, and instead of giving me back the money straight away, he used the money he had for online shopping. It's not that much money, he could have easily paid me back a few days later. These are just some examples. The worst is that he never shuts up about the way that other people, his boss, his co-workers, my parents, my brother and I, are treating him badly, which is just not true. About 95% of the time, he is the one at fault, but if the rules are not bent in his favor, then the other person must be the bad one. My parents sometimes say things that make me believe that he's draining all energy from them, which is the way I would describe being related to him. And I'm sure that he is not the worst brother out there. There are probably millions of people who have it worse than I do, but being forced to be near him all the time just makes me tired. And I know that saying you hate someone is extreme, but I genuinely believe that my life would be better without him. Sorry for this probably shitty post, I just really needed to let it all out. I just realized how much of an asshole I am. I always judge people, especially when I see them as beneath me. When I'm having a fight with someone, I don't tell them something witty, I tell them something insulting, just to end the argument or something. I always think about what's the best insult I can say to a person if we were to have an argument. I judge people on what their achievements are. Today has made me realize how much of an asshole I am. I still feel the cringe and the guilt as I'm typing this. My girlfriend has been processing her license to become a teacher for quite a while now. We had to go back and forth between government offices, police precinct, regulation commission, etc. because one government office is saying a different thing than the other when we are processing for the requirements. My girlfriend has to get these requirements and has to attend this oath taking that has around 5,000 people and I need to escort her. By escort, I mean I'm just gonna drive her to the event and wait outside. Attendees aren't allowed to bring outsiders. The line was long and the place was very hot. Third world. Well, in this oath-taking event, they need to acquire a pin and a booklet as proof that she attended this oath-taking. The thing is, the government, regulation commission, office responsible for this event ran out of pins and booklets. So they resort to having the officials put a signature on the attendees' tickets with a note saying that they don't have a pin and a booklet and they just need to present it to the main office. So after the event, we went straight to the government office to claim my girlfriend's license ID. But the pin can be obtained tomorrow if you still want to acquire the pin. They did not believe my girlfriend because they don't know who the person who signed her ticket is. I mean, who would know someone's identity based on signature not resembling the person's name? Then, they asked for a picture proof of my girlfriend being there. They did not announce this beforehand, that they require a photographed proof, and they declined. My girlfriend only said a frustrated, "Oh my god." They basically just told her to be absent from her job tomorrow and deal with their shortcomings. I was pissed, not only because they have no proper dissemination of information, but also their system of getting proof can be bypassed by a simple Photoshop, assuming someone spends their time with that. And because I had to do a lot of things to help my girlfriend just to acquire a claim slip for her license. I told my girlfriend that we should go and that these people are idiots, that's why they can only work behind a counter. This is why I think I'm an asshole. I did not mean to make it loud, it was only supposed to be for my girlfriend. My girlfriend forgot her claim slip and went back in to get it. We were confronted by an older lady with teary eyes and basically told my girlfriend that her conduct is unbecoming of a teacher. Which triggered my girlfriend because all she did was say a frustrated "oh my god" and called me out for calling them stupid. I don't know if she heard the working behind the counter bit. I apologized and told her why we were frustrated and that their method of dissemination is not enough. The thing is, I'm still fuming at this point, and I intentionally made my apologies sound insincere just to get this over with. While driving home, it made me realize how much of an asshole I am, that it's better to just let my anger pass and argue with a person instead of trying to insult someone while angry. I just want to travel back in time and just change the things that I said. It doesn't help that I insulted someone that can't fight back. I ghosted the only girl who ever loved me. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, and up until 3 years ago I thought I was a good person. I met this girl who was amazing. She was beautiful, interesting, intelligent, and we had amazing moments. I loved spending time with her and drove hours to be with her. I even once went to go see her after a concert and couldn't remember her address and my phone died, so I knocked on every door on a street to find her. She bought me cute little gifts and took me to events just because she remembered that I liked something and mentioned it in a convo before. I couldn't believe someone could love me like this as I was insecure. One day she texts me drunk telling me she loves me, wants to marry me and all that, about 2 months into knowing me. I freaked out. She texted me the next day to say it was just drunk texting and just to forget it. The next day I slept at her place and she again broke down telling me she wanted to be with me forever. I couldn't believe it and I stopped talking to her. She tried to call me. I didn't pick up. She begged me to just talk to her and go through things. I convinced myself it was the right decision. Weeks later, I realized I fucked up big time. I wrote back to apologize. No response. I tried again at New Year's and she replied saying I was just doing it to make myself feel better. She was probably a bit right. I apologized and told her exactly why I did what I did. She said let's meet up again and start again, but I was so afraid of hurting her again I said no. I think about this every night and I can't forgive myself for most likely fucking up the only real relationship I ever had with someone who genuinely loved me. I don't know how to just get over it. She's now with someone else, so that's water under the bridge, but I can't get it out of my mind. Stabbed a kid in the back with scissors when I was 10. I was bullied a lot as a kid. The only way I ever knew how to handle it back then was to retaliate by screaming or doing something much worse to them instead. It doesn't excuse what I did, however, I did it with no thought and regretted it immediately. It was the last period of the day. Our subject was art and I was trying to draw, but the kid next to me kept grabbing my sketchbook. I went to the teacher 2 times and each time he would place it on my desk before I'd reach the teacher, as if to pretend he never took it in the first place. I had enough eventually, and my first reaction was to grab a pair of scissors that were on my table and stab him in the back. He immediately cried and went to the teacher. The teacher had asked me what was wrong with me, and I plainly answered, he took my book and wouldn't return it. I stepped back a bit and returned to my desk and noticed the crowd of students and the teacher looking at me in shock and disappointment. In the midst of it, I had regretted it immediately and was angry at myself for doing something so stupid. I'm not sure how bad he was hit, but it wasn't mentioned at all, and I was just told to pay for his punctured coat, which lessened the impact. I had lost all my friends, and I was seen as a bad person all because I couldn't control myself, which does sum up my childhood very well. I wish I could have actually apologized to him, but I realize I'll never see him again in my life. A guy I hung out with took advantage of and abused me several times, and I lied to the police and my parents about details that could have gotten him arrested. I was 15 at the time and I had, and still have, self-worth issues and was very gullible in believing anything flattering a guy said to me. This guy who I followed on Instagram prior to the incidents, because yes, this happened more than once, decided to DM me out of the blue one day. I had never spoken or really knew who this guy was, but he had graduated high school when I was a freshman, and at this time I was a sophomore. Now that I look at it, his messages were rather odd. At the time, I didn't think they were. He said the usual "hi, what are you doing?" stuff and then went into how he doesn't have money and then asked me what music I liked. At the time, I didn't know many people who liked the same music as me, and at the time my favorite band was Pierce the Veil. He then said, "Oh, that's my favorite band too," and told me his favorite song by them was Bedless, which is sorta a love song. He asked for my Snapchat and here is where the shitshow starts. I gave him my Snapchat and automatically he started complimenting me, and, at this point, I was very flattered. It went on like this for weeks. He would compliment me, tell me how he feels about me, and how he wants to see me. I knew my mom would never let me see a guy who was 18 while I was still 15. I made him aware of this, and he automatically said something like, "She doesn't have to know." Flash forward to a week later on. That Friday, he was supposed to pick me up from school at around 3 p.m. I told my mom I was going to my friend, let's call her Jenna's, house and her dad would drop me off later. I told one of my best guy friends where I would be at, so he knew I was safe, and I said, "If I don't text you by 7, call the police." My friend Nate told me this wasn't a good idea because it seemed sketchy to him. I blew this off and said nothing was wrong with it. He said he was taking a picture of the license plate on the car just in case, so he felt better. When the douchebag Jeremy finally pulls up, I say bye to Nate who was standing by the school waiting with me and get in Jeremy's car. The first red flag I should have noticed was the fact that he made sure he was playing Pierce the Veil in his car when he picked me up. Me, being a music fanatic, I can tell when someone doesn't really like a band because they either stick to the most popular songs or most popular album. In this case, it was their most popular album. For context, at this point, I knew he was a stoner. He asked me if I would want to smoke weed with him the first time I saw him. I said no, because at that point I had never done it, and I was scared. Also, I was afraid my mom would find out. He lived about 15 minutes down the highway from my school on a main road in the town next to mine. We pulled in his driveway and the second red flag was him telling me to leave my backpack in his car, and this included my cell phone. I'm not usually on it while hanging out with people, so I didn't think much of leaving it in the car. I walk in his small house and the first thing that hits me is this god-awful smell. Found out later it was weed. His house was disgusting. The floor was coated in stains. The couch was beat up and had holes in it among other things. He told me to sit down, and I did so hesitantly. He asks what I like to watch, and I told him one of my favorite movies is Beetlejuice, so he says he has a copy of it and goes to get it. He comes back and plays it. He started to cuddle me on the couch, and it was nice, I'll admit, because I did like him, but pretty soon it turned sour. Behind his sofa he pulled out a large glass bong and a grinder full of weed. He then proceeds to smoke it. Knowing I didn't want to, I was prepared to say no. He offered, and at first, I said no, and he kept pushing me to the point that I gave in. I smoked enough to make me feel strange, even though he swears I didn't smoke enough. I said after about 20 minutes that I was really tired and my head was spinning. He offered that we could just lay in his room until I felt better. I also didn't think this was weird. Red flag number 3. When we got to his room, which surprisingly was very clean, he locked the door as soon as I laid down on his bed. He did share his small house with 2 other people who weren't home at the time, so I figured that maybe it was just to keep them out. Just as he laid on the bed, he cuddled me for about 20 minutes and then proceeded to kiss me. He took his pants off and got up and went to a side drawer by his dresser to get a condom, I assume. For reference, I'm barely 5 feet 4 and I weighed about 145 lbs. At the time, he was like 6 feet 1, 280 pounds or something like that. I was so stoned that I didn't even realize what he was doing until he was well inside me. I just really remember staring at the white popcorn ceiling in pain, holding back tears until he stopped. He then told me to get dressed and took me home. I was still processing what happened, so I didn't really tell anybody, and the first thing I did when I went home was shower because I felt so dirty. Not even a week later, he wanted to see me again. I had never really felt nervous about seeing him until after the previous incident. He didn't mention what happened before, which made me think maybe I was sleeping or imagining what happened. He picked me up again, and the same process happened again. He told me he loved me and that I wasn't to tell anyone about what happened. That was the last time I heard from him until 2 months later. Before he messaged me again, I went against his advisory and told my friend Nate. Nate was pissed, and, at the time, I couldn't figure out why. Jeremy had a younger brother in the same grade as Nate named Devin. Nate told Devin what happened, spewing threats and other things, and Devin told Jeremy. When I heard from Jeremy again, he didn't mention that he knew about me telling Nate. In fact, I didn't even know he knew. He asked to see me again, which I didn't want to do. So I made up an excuse, but then he retaliated with, "Well, I'm depressed and suicidal. I miss you, and I still love you." I felt bad, and the same shit happened once again. This time is where the abuse happened. Once again I was coaxed to smoke weed, but I decided not to inhale it, but make it look like I did. Jeremy then pulled off his pants and asked me to shiz dick. I said no, because I didn't want to, and I got up and said, "This is stupid, take me home." As my back was facing him and I was in the doorway, he grabbed me by the neck hard enough to leave bruises and slammed me into his door, leaving a huge hole in the panel. He then smacked me and told me I was a slut and a bitch, and ridiculed me for telling Nate, and told me that was what I deserved, and laughed as I cried. He also had nudes of mine he was threatening to send out. He told me that if I kept doing as he asked, he would delete them when he had no use for them anymore. I complied because I was afraid of my parents finding out I sent nudes and I didn't want to be grounded. I said him off, and then he took me home. From that point, I didn't hear from him again until another 2 months later, where the same favor was repeated. At that point, I wanted to end my life so badly because nobody, not even my own therapist, knew what was going on because I was afraid to be blackmailed. Finally, I broke down in front of my best friend Jenny. She was shocked and immediately took me to see the school resource officer the next day, because not only was I suicidal, but I was also missing a lot of school because my depression was worsening. Eventually the cops were involved and came to my school to conduct an interview with me. This was where I had to tell my mom what happened. I was scared, but me and the resource officer were close, and he told me he believed I had the strength to tell her. But I twisted the story, avoiding the blackmail part. She was very angry at first, but then she started to cry, and I'd never seen her cry, so I felt terrible. The police said that all they could do at the moment was tell him not to contact me. In my state, the age of consent is 16, and it is really hard to prove rape. The police officer told me that because I was 15 and he was 18. It wasn't statutory rape because we weren't more than 4 years apart. They also said that there wasn't enough proof that I was abused, even though I photographed my bruises. I didn't know that if I had just told the full truth, that he would have been arrested and had his phone searched. And if he still had my nudes, because I was a minor, he would have most likely gotten possession of child pornography charges. To make a long story short, he eventually started to stalk me and show up at my house. We filed harassment charges, which were later dropped due to lack of evidence, and I got a restraining order. I haven't heard from Jeremy since, and, because of this situation, I sort of befriended his brother Devin, who is the complete opposite of Jeremy and is a total sweetheart. Today I still deal with the mental trauma due to this situation, and I struggle to have romantic relationships. I still go to therapy, which helps, but I still am upset that I lied all that time ago, because having him pay for the trauma I went through and what I still go through would have helped me a lot and kept other girls like me away from him. Well, that's my confession. Sorry it's so long, it's just most of this has been held in for too long. Thank you for watching. Code M. Hit the like button, comment and subscribe to see new videos daily. For an instant I think I saw the loneliness of man as a gigantic wave, which had been frozen in front of me, held back by the invisible wall of metaphor, and so it goes.